In a world filled with noise, attention, and self-promotion, it's hard to imagine someone willingly choosing the opposite. But Saint Bruno did exactly that. He turned away from prestige, from influence, from the path of recognition to embrace silence, solitude, and the hidden life with God. He had everything: a brilliant mind, a reputation for wisdom, and a future in the church that could have led him to the highest offices. Not more words, but more truth. Not more noise, but silence. The kind of silence that strips you bare before God, that forces you to face yourself without distraction, that makes room for the voice that truly matters. But deep within, he knew something was missing. Knowledge, influence, even ecclesiastical power, none of it satisfied the hunger of his soul. Bruno was born in Cologne around the year 1030, a brilliant scholar and a respected teacher. He longed for something deeper, not more ideas, but more presence. So Bruno left, with space, with humility, a radical yes to the truth that God alone is enough, that the soul finds its meaning not in doing more, but in being with the one who created it. A holiness born not of activity, but of presence. He gathered a few companions and withdrew into the mountains of Chartreuse in France. He never sought recognition, and he never left behind grand writings. But the holiness of his life could not be hidden. The Church recognizes him as a saint, not because of fame or miracles, but because his entire life was a quiet miracle of fidelity. Even when Bruno was later called to serve Pope Urban II in Rome, even when he was once again surrounded by power and noise, he remained inwardly still. His heart had already made its home in God. Eventually, he was allowed to return to solitude, where he died in peace around the year 1101. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that silence can be sacred. They lived in small hermitages, only coming together for liturgical prayer. That we don't need to shout to be heard by God, we need to listen. There was no preaching, no missions, no public activity. Just God, just the soul, just the work of love hidden in the unseen. There, he laid the foundations for what would become one of the most austere and radical religious orders in the Church, the Carthusians. Maybe your mind is scattered, your heart restless, your soul tired. Then take Saint Bruno's hand. Begin small. Choose 5 minutes of silence. Step away from distraction. Let your soul breathe again. And in that space, whisper a simple prayer. Here I am, Lord. Their life was marked by almost total silence, solitude, prayer, and manual labor. And here's the paradox. In doing so, Bruno became a witness to the world, without speaking to crowds, without writing great volumes, without traveling to far lands. His life echoed through the centuries. Because his silence spoke. It spoke of a different way to live. A freedom not defined by achievements, a joy not tied to comfort. In our world today, the temptation is to always be busy, to fill every moment with sound, with screens, with words. But Saint Bruno's life confronts us with a question: what happens when we stop? When we stop chasing and performing and proving what's left? Who are we when there's no one to impress? That's when we meet God. That's when the soul begins to pray not with many words, but with availability. Bruno's silence wasn't an escape. It was an offering. And here's the beautiful twist. Bruno was never canonized by the Church in the formal sense. So, what can we learn from Bruno? We learn that silence is not absence, it is presence. That solitude is not loneliness, it is intimacy. Maybe today, you're overwhelmed by noise. If this message resonates with you, if you long for a deeper spiritual life in a noisy world, then I invite you to support this mission, because maybe what we need most is not one more voice, but one more soul willing to listen.